Well, the good news, everybody. Turns out that when you propose spending $3.5 trillion, it now actually costs nothing. I'm serious. That's the word that actually just came in from the Biden administration about their new $3.5 trillion bill. Ironically, Nate, well, it's the reconciliation process. Like you're reconciling. There's two pieces to this. So how do you reconcile, by the way, the idea that spending $3.5 trillion costs nothing? The short answer is that you can't. But that's okay. Because after all, we live in an era of magical math and magical ideas about the world that have no bearing on reality. We're ruled by politicians who live in a fantasy land where money may not grow on trees, but it does come flying off the central bank printer, so it's free. And except, for the cost of toner. Now that we've discovered free money, there will be no more poverty. Everyone will just be a billionaire. We'll just print dollars over and over again until everyone can have a private jet. So I don't know why we're not making a bigger deal of this, because this is a major breakthrough. Nobody ever has to work again. You can spend as much as you want. It costs you nothing. And then just print more. We're all rich. In any case, that's what the Biden administration is telling America as Democrats attempt to ram through one of the most expensive and expansive spending bills in history. It's not going to cost us anything to spend $3.5 trillion. Sure. Democrat Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal is not good with an Excel sheet and is not a financial advisor, but she is a lifelong organizer. And she's a mom, according to her Twitter bio. So I would love to see how she handles her stuff and how she wants to handle the bank accounts and finances of America. So she wants to tell you that spending $3.5 trillion now doesn't cost anything. I'm serious. Watch.
As I said to the president, and I heard him say, this is a $0 bill because it's all going to be paid for with taxes on the wealthiest corporations and the wealthiest individuals, which, by the way, makes it more popular than it was even before, and it's already very popular.
This is a $0 cost-free $3.5 trillion bill, right? If the idea of spending $3.5 trillion was popular before, she says, imagine how popular this bill is going to be when people find out that it costs nothing. And anyway, says Congresswoman Jayapal, she hasn't heard of a better idea. I mean, really, has anyone free money? Best idea ever. Now, you're probably thinking, this is just a crazy Democratic Congresswoman who probably believes in woke math, like 2 + 2 = 5, because it's unfair if it's just 4. You know what? You're just trying to make all Democrats look bad. You would probably think that, but you'd be wrong. So guess who's also saying that this $3.5 trillion spending bill will cost us nothing? The president himself, who apparently broke out his abacus in the attic and decided to, do some bead math. Here's the president getting all mathematical. He tweeted, quote, my Build Back Better agenda costs $0 instead of that's like a common phrase for the left. Instead of wasting money on tax breaks, loopholes, and tax evasion for big corporations and the wealthy, we can this is so stupid. They say this every generation. Multiple times. We can make a once-in-a-generation investment in working America, and it adds $0 to the national debt, end quote. So they're not going to waste money on things like, oh, I'm going to get mad. I'm not going to make it through this. They're not going to waste money on things like tax breaks, which allow you to keep more of your money. That's your money. That is your money. Letting you keep your hard-earned money. Where do you think you live, America? We're living in the United States of equity now, so catch up. So we're going to get rid of those tax breaks and keep more of your money so we can spend it on important things like tree equity. That's actually what Democrats have in this. So you're asking about tree equity. I'm going to go back to the math and how it actually does not cost $0. So tree equity, I know this is the main reason that you voted in the last election. It was like one of your top priorities. Tree equity is defined as a tree planting program that identifies the cities that can gain the most significant health and economic and climate benefits by increasing the tree canopies in places of high need. So that's why actually you have like all of the crime happening in Chicago and gang warfare and drug deals and shooting with all the gangs and the drug dealers, etc. It's because of a lack of trees. $3 billion of that $3.5 trillion is going to tree equity. I don't even want to point out people in deserts. I mean, if you have more trees than someone else, you're probably a tree supremacist. And if you don't agree, you're just demonstrating your green fragility. Anyway, so since this bill costs nothing, the Democrats have decided to spend the free money on things that do nothing, like electric charging stations for rural areas, because people who live out in the Ozarks, where my family is all coming from, they're not driving Fords and Chevys and GMCs anymore. No, they're driving Nissan Leafs. Leafs or leaves if it's plural. That bugs me so bad. And their charging stations are overwhelmed in places like Oklahoma. I mean, really, you know that cousin Jethro, that he goes down and he gets him one of them EVs? I know you do. I mean, you're pulling up to the Tractor Supply in an EV. I mean, we love fossil fuels. So the rural folks will use them charging stations for sure. That's apparently what Democrats are banking on. And since, there's not too much wrong with being a germaphobe, but there is when you're using it as an excuse for statism, because they have $4 billion for distance learning. And because you're a big fat bigot that doesn't believe in tree equity, here's $25 million for bias training. You got to be trained out of your bias. So rest assured, every dollar of this bill that costs us nothing is super well spent. This is Jen Psaki talking about if spending money still costs something, it doesn't mean anything anymore. I mean, like, we're living in a magical world. Here's Jen Psaki.
This package, the reconciliation package, would cost $0. So what I'm saying, the case we're making here is that there needs to be agreement on the different components. There's broad agreement on the goals. And then there needs to be agreement on what the revenue pay-fors are. There's a range of options for revenue pay-fors. Clearly, the president has laid out the different areas that he would like to invest in, and all of that needs to come together.
See, when Pinocchio lies, his nose grows. And when Jen Psaki is gaslighting you, she gesticulates like mad. Or maybe she's like strangling someone imaginary, I don't know. Or invisible. So again, it's cost us nothing. They're just going to tax the ever-loving hell out of corporations to make up for it. Now, because you were not born a minute ago, you're thinking, wait a second, aren't those mean, nasty corporations? And by the way, do you know how many of them identify as S-corps? Go and look that up and see how many small business people, which drive 60% of the economy, actually register as S-corps, and how they have to pay their taxes and how they don't actually own all of that. That's actually their business wealth, but whatever. Ignorant people who've never ever had to meet payroll determining how corporations and who gets to identify as what and tax structure, that's the way to go. So those mean, nasty corporations that are going to pass the bill on to all of us, that's right. So you're thinking, I've been noticing all my bills going up lately, and everybody's talking about inflation. That means corporations always pass the bill on to the consumer, right? But you know what? Who cares? Because money is free, and there's no bill to pass on. It's all free. They don't care about making money anymore. They care about equity. So here's Jen Psaki again, from yesterday, explaining why Joe Biden believes that corporations won't pass the bill on to you. Watch.
There are some, and I'm not sure if this is the case in this report, who argue that in the past, companies have passed on these costs to consumers. I'm not sure if that's the argument being made in this report. We feel that that's unfair and absurd, and the American people would not stand for that.
I feel like that needs to be a whole dance. Just like both of those clips. So there it is. For the first time in history, corporations will not be raising their prices when they're taxed heavily. And because it's absurd and unfair that corporations could pass the costs on to you. How dare they try to feed people? Besides, you're watching them, says Jen Psaki, and they don't need to raise prices to make a profit anyway. She's seen all of their books. Jen knows. And you know what? She's right, because money's free. We already actually established that. The national debt that's at 11 quadrillion. Actually, it's like 30 trillion. You couldn't even, how many lifetimes would it take you to even count that far? It's crazy. I mean, you should actually do the math on that. Can people do math anymore? So you can raise the minimum wage to $100 an hour for flipping burgers and then add a tree equity tax on every Whopper and Big Mac, and corporations are just going to eat that bill. You don't have to pay anything. The administration promises. Now, what Democrats mean by saying that it costs us $0 is that the government can afford it. So let's say that you want a brand new loaded Ford F-150 and you can afford it. Does that mean the F-150 is free? Does that mean the $80,000 you spent was free? Nope, it means that you had $80,000 fully loaded, left your bank account, and it's now sitting in Ford's bank account. That's because you live in a zip code called reality and not in fantasy land called DC.